Okay, our next speaker is Danny Hall. He is the Director of Public Affairs for Soka Gakkai International, SGI USA, and is based in Washington, D.C., though he's joining us from California today. SGI USA is the most diverse Buddhist community in the United States and is part of a larger SGI network comprised of more than 12 million people in 192 countries and territories. SGI has a long history of working to eliminate nuclear weapons. Danny has assisted in the organization of several conferences dealing with the topic of reduction or elimination of nuclear arms. He has authored a number of works on this topic as well. He currently serves on the steering community of Back from the Brink, bringing communities together to abolish nuclear weapons. I have found some incredible beauty in what I have read in the Lotus Sutra, and I'm excited to hear him share more with us now and hear his declarations for peace, which are especially relevant today. Welcome, Danny. Thank you so much for joining us in this interfaith celebration.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you everyone for inviting me and letting me be a part of this conversation. It's a real pleasure. As Jill was saying, much of my work is dealing with advocacy issues related to peace and disarmament, but it's always a real treat to be able to dive back into the faith basis for our Nichiren Buddhist movement for creating value and working for a more peaceful world. What I'd like to do is share a more kind of a general overview of Buddhism practiced within the Soka Gakkai Nichiren Buddhist tradition, focusing in on a few really important key concepts, and then maybe talk a little bit about what it's like for me as an individual to practice Soka Gakkai Nichiren Buddhism and how I got involved and started on that path. And I have some slides prepared, so I'm going to share my screen with everyone to help with my presentation. And you should be able to see it. So one of the first questions people ask when it comes to Buddhism is who or what is the Buddha? Buddha comes from the root word bud, which is Sanskrit for opening a person's eyes or blooming of a flower. It literally is translated as awakened one. And it's also a word to describe great Buddhist leaders and teachers throughout the history of the Buddhist tradition. It's also used to describe a sort of non-material, in a sense, concept of Buddha, which is like this idea of universal Buddha, or this fundamental law that permeates all phenomena throughout the universe. What did the Buddha awaken to? One of the passages from Nichiren that I think helps shed some light on this question is this. If you wish to free yourself from the sufferings of birth and death you have endured through eternity and attain supreme enlightenment in this lifetime, you must awaken to the mystic truth which has always been within your life. So what is this mystic truth? It's understood in Buddhism as the Dharma or the law. It describes, again, both the universal law that the Buddha awoke to and also the teachings he used to lead others to that awakening. It's also understood as the cosmic vitality from which all arises. It's also the living, compassionate principle or wisdom that governs and supports the workings of all life. Now, one of the most common questions that arises regarding Buddhism is whether there is a belief in God, or how do we understand God? Well, in fact, there is no specific reference to a monotheistic God in any of the Buddhist literature. Buddhism has always been a very humanistic philosophy. What we do have in Buddhism is the concept of the greater self and the lesser self, which shows how each life is a microcosmos operating in the context of a larger macrocosmos of the universe. And one way of describing that is through the example of waves on the ocean. Waves appear from the ocean as a result of such causes and conditions as wind, gravity, tides, the slope of the ocean floor, etc. And if we look at the wave shown here, we can see that there are differences that we can identify among them. Some are shorter, some are longer, some are more powerful than others, some have longer or shorter lifespans than others. But what is the one thing that we can say with certainty about every single wave? It is that they are all, despite their differences, equally expressions of the ocean. And from a Buddhist perspective, it is the same thing with people. Buddhism teaches that just as the ocean, in a sense, waves, the universe, in a sense, peoples. That is, in a sense, expresses itself through all sorts of life. And while we may be very good at identifying the differences among these various expressions, such as categories of race, age, intellect, social class, party affiliation, we make a big mistake when we only identify something by its differences. It would be like defining a wave only by its relative size, strength, or appearance, and completely overlook the fact that it is the ocean itself. This identification of ourselves only by our relative identity, our social standing, our appearance, how cool people think we are, our grade point average, how many followers we have on social media. This is what Buddhism would refer to as our ego or lesser self. The greater self is like the entire ocean of life. And Buddhism views our fundamental identity as being equal to the entire cosmos. This is the greater self. And according to Buddhism, people get into trouble when they have a diluted view of themselves, seeing themselves only in comparison to others, seeing only the differences. This leads to a deep sense of separation and suffering in life from the Buddhist perspective. It's like a wave that doesn't realize it's part of the ocean. We cut ourselves off not only from other people, but from the natural environment and from the depths of our own capability and resources. Buddhism views this delusion of separation as the basic human problem to be addressed. And bridging the separation is the basic purpose of Buddhist practice. Buddhist practice aims to bridge this delusion, this separation, and create a profound dialogue between the particular lesser self and the eternal cosmos of the greater self. This practice is often taken the form of meditation, in which the mind and its attachments are stilled to perceive this dharma or law that pervades our personal life and the life of the cosmos. But to achieve and maintain this level of contemplation is very difficult for many people, especially amidst the complexities of modern life. And it's for this reason that in the Nichiren Buddhist tradition, Nichiren crystallized this dharma or law into the mantra of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, which is an expression of the presence of the eternal Buddha nature in all life. For members of the Soka Gakkai Nichiren Buddhist community, our daily practice of reciting the Lotus Sutra and chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo is the process by which we redirect and revitalize the lesser self by reconnecting it with the very life of the cosmos. And I'll talk about this in a little more detail later. But it's through this continuous effort at Buddhist practice that we come to bridge this gap and reintegrate the wave of the lesser self with the ocean of the cosmos, so to speak. Again, this is the basis for Nichiren Buddhism. So let me talk a little bit about Nichiren. Nichiren was a 13th century Japanese reformist teacher who established the form of Buddhism practiced by members of the Soka Gakkai Nichiren Buddhist community. Nichiren engaged in an exhaustive study of the various Buddhist sutras, treatises, and commentaries. He concluded that the heart of Shakyamuni, or Siddhartha Gautama's enlightenment, is to be found in the Lotus Sutra. His interpretation of the Lotus Sutra emphasized the absolute equality of all people, and that all people, regardless of superficial differences such as gender or social standing, can manifest the life state of a Buddha just as they are in this lifetime. Nichiren also came to the conclusion that the principle or law to which all Buddhas are enlightened is expressed in the phrase Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, from the title or Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra. The title is viewed not just as the title, but the essence and the experience of the enlightenment of the Buddha. For Nichiren Buddhists, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo is a simple and accessible spiritual practice to enable all people to tap into the Buddha nature and enter onto the path of Buddhist wisdom. Here we go. Nichiren entered Kyoshimuedera, a temple in his hometown on the eastern coast of Japan at age 12 and was ordained there at the age of 16. He was motivated by an awareness of life's impermanence and a desire to escape the round of birth and death, that he desired to know which among the many sutras and rival schools represented the Buddha's true intention. And he wished to resolve doubts about certain historical and political events that seemed to contradict Buddhist teachings. So Nichiren engaged in this exhaustive study, including those at Kamakura, the seat of military rule and the location of key temples under the government. And after returning to Kiyomisudera at the age of 32, he gave a public presentation where he concluded that the heart of Shakyamuni's enlightenment is found in the Lotus Sutra. His interpretation of the Lotus Sutra emphasized the absolute equality of all people, and that all people, just as they are, can manifest the state of life of a Buddha in this lifetime. Nichiren also came to the conclusion that the principle or law to which all Buddhas are enlightened is expressed in the phrase Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, from the title or Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra. Many pre-Lotus Sutra schools of Buddhism taught that enlightenment was only accessible after an arduous process undertaken over unimaginably long periods of time, over many lifetimes, in fact. In dramatic contrast, the Lotus Sutra explains that Buddhahood or Buddha nature is already present in all life. The presence of Buddha nature in all life is the Buddhist basis for the equality of all people and the view that even within the life of a person apparently dominated by evil, there exists the Buddha nature. There are 7 parables in the Lotus Sutra. One of them that I think gets at this idea effectively is called the jewel hidden in the robe. The gist of it is that there's a rich friend. There's a rich friend and a poor friend, and they're having dinner one night. The poor friend passes out. The rich friend decides to take a precious gem and sew it into the lining of the poor friend's coat. The next morning, the poor friend wakes up. He sees that his friend had disappeared. And he leaves. He goes on to live his life. He struggles in many ways financially, and never realizes until many years later when he encounters his friend that this entire time he had this gem sewn into the lining of his coat. And some of the key messages of this parable are that we should not have ignorance in forgetting the supreme life condition of Buddhahood, and we should not be satisfied with lower states of life. And if one cannot see the supreme jewel in another, it means we can't really recognize it in ourselves either. And it's also a call to build a solid self. So like finding a diamond hidden in a robe or a lotus flower emerging from a muddy swamp, the goal of Nichiren Buddhist practice is to awaken and develop the Buddha nature in our lives. Uh, from the Nichiren Buddhist perspective, we have to rediscover this jewel um, and other jewels again and again. Buddhahood is not a static condition or a final destination, uh, but is a uh, it's, uh, it's a dynamic journey of continual development and discovery. Um, it's the path of wisdom in which we continually strive to bring forth Buddha nature in our lives, become ruled less by our lesser self, dominated by greed, anger, and foolishness, um, known as the three poisons, and direct our lives based on our greater self, courage, wisdom, compassion, and vital life force. So the essence of the Lotus Sutra is the conviction that all people possess a Buddha nature, and as a result, possess the ability to transform suffering and overcome any problem or difficulty they may encounter in life. The logic for this assertion is based on the belief that the Buddha nature is kind of like a bridge uh, that makes individual lives inseparable from the fundamental law that underlies the workings of all life and the universe. Therefore, by tapping into one's Buddha nature, one simultaneously taps into and fuses one life with the wisdom underlying the workings of the entire universe. So, how does one tap into the Buddha nature inherent in their life? Nichiren concluded that the mantra practice, based on reciting the name of this law or principle, provided a way for all people to activate um, within their own lives and experience the joy that comes from liberating oneself from the lesser self. That mantra is found in the title of the Lotus Sutra, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. For Nichiren Buddhists, chanting the mantra Nam Myoho Renge Kyo is a vow, an expression of determination to embrace and manifest one's Buddha nature. It's a pledge to oneself to never yield to difficulties and to win over one's sufferings. And at the same time, it's a vow to help others reveal this law in their own lives and achieve happiness. You can roughly translate Nam Myoho Renge Kyo from the Sanskrit. Nam comes from the Sanskrit namas, meaning to devote or dedicate oneself. Myoho, myo means mystic or wonderful, or in a sense, difficult to comprehend. The idea that each life is an expression of the life of the universe, a wonder that people can transform their life and others at any time and in any circumstances, and transform life of unhappiness into supreme happiness. Ho refers to law, that this is a fundamental law of the universe that permeates all phenomena. Renge literally translates as lotus flower. It's an important symbol in Buddhism. The lotus flower blooms and seeds simultaneously. So it's sort of representative of this concept in Buddhism of the simultaneity of cause and effect, meaning that every cause we make at every moment, every thought we think, word we speak, action we take, plants an effect in the depths of our lives, and which will manifest itself when we encounter the appropriate circumstances. The lotus flower also is known for growing in dirty, muddy swamps. But as it grows out of that swamp, it simultaneously helps to purify the water that it's in. So in a way, it's an important symbol in Buddhism of how, even though, or because of the muck and mud that we experience in our lives, we have the opportunity to polish ourselves and reveal our inherent Buddha nature. And as we do so, because of the interconnectedness of life, we simultaneously exert a positive influence on our environment. And Kyo means sutra, or eternal truth that permeates life in the universe. The Chinese character Kyo implies the idea of a thread. So you can think in a sense of a fabric with vertical and horizontal threads, perhaps the horizontal threads being the mundane aspects of our daily life, and the vertical threads being this eternal truth that permeates life and the universe, meaning that there's no separation between this fundamental law and the mundane reality of daily living. For Nichiren Buddhists, to chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo is an act of faith in the magnitude of life's inherent possibilities, in the unlimited strength of one's life. It's not a mystical phrase that brings forth supernatural power, nor is it a godlike entity transcending ourselves that we rely upon. It's the principle that honors the dignity and possibility of ordinary lives, and if you make consistent efforts, you will win. This is the practice of the Soka Gakkai. Soka Gakkai is an international lay Buddhist community based on the teachings of Nichiren and the Lotus Sutra. It was founded in Japan in 1930, and it grew and developed in the aftermath of World War II. Today, Soka Gakkai International is a worldwide Buddhist community of some 12 million members in 192 countries and territories. I believe its core philosophy is encapsulated by the statement from Daisaku Ikeda, the founding president of Soka Gakkai International. Quote, "A great human revolution in a single individual will help achieve a change in the destiny of a nation, and further will enable a change in the destiny of all humankind." Oops, let me go back. Human revolution is this idea that each of us has this unfathomable potential, and in striving to bring this forth, spurred by trying circumstances or the desire to live more fully or responsibly, we undergo a process of positive internal change that affects our family, our workplace, society, and ultimately the entire web of life. And now with that background, I'm going to elaborate a little bit on two key concepts in Buddhism, non-substantiality or ku, and dependent origination or the interconnectedness of all life. First, ku, as eternity of life and death. From a Buddhist perspective, existence is eternal, without beginning or end. This is true of all phenomena. From the tiniest of microbes to the largest swirling galaxies in the universe, existence is viewed as a constant recycling of life, death, and rebirth. And one analogy I like to use to describe the Buddhist view of the eternity of life and death is the relationship between oceans and waves. It's a metaphor I come to again and again. Imagine a great deep ocean, tranquil and quiet in its depths, and at the surface, waves cresting into and out of existence. Buddhism would say that the waves cresting at the surface are born and alive, and decline as they fall, and eventually die when they return to the greater body of the ocean. From this view, all is a cycle of flux. Buddhism would say that the waves represent manifest existence, and the deep ocean represent latent existence, and both are part of a holistic phenomena of eternal existence that encompasses birth, life, decline, and death, or latent existence, and rebirth. Because of this breakdown of the strict duality of life and death, Buddhist scholars have tried to articulate the true nature of reality as ku, or neither existence nor non-existence, and non-substantiality. Ku is also viewed as the essence of matter. Interestingly, you see this echoed in modern physics, where attempts to discover the essence of matter have arrived at a description of the world very similar to neither existence nor non-existence. What science is telling us is that there's no actual easily identifiable thing to the basis of matter. Subatomic particles, the building blocks of the physical world that we inhabit, appear to oscillate between states of being and non-being. Instead of a fixed thing in a particular place, we find only shifting waves of probability. At this level, the world is actually a highly fluid and unpredictable place, essentially without substance. It is this non-substantial nature of reality that the concept of ku tries to describe. Ku is also viewed as elucidating the latent potential inherent in life. Consider how when we're in the grip of a powerful emotion, such as anger, this expresses itself in our entire being, or glaring expression, raised voice, tensed body, and so on. When our temper cools, the anger disappears. What has happened to it? We know anger still exists somewhere within us, but something causes us to feel, until something causes us to feel angry again, we can't really find any evidence of its existence. To all intents and purposes, it has ceased to exist. Memories are another example. We are unaware of their existence until they suddenly rise into our consciousness. The rest of the time, as with our anger, they are in a state of latency or coup. They exist, and yet they do not. In the same way, Buddhists view life in all its manifestations containing vast potentials and possibilities, which are not always apparent or obvious, but which, given the right circumstances, can become manifest. This infinite potential is, in fact, what Buddhism views as the very nature of life. An understanding of coup is infinite potential, therefore. Uh, Helps us to see that despite how we may see the things in our environment, people, situations, relationships, or our own lives, they're not fixed, but they're dynamic, constantly changing and evolving. They're filled with latent potential, which can become manifest at any time. Even the most seemingly hopeless situation has within it astounding positive possibilities. This concept has very practical importance for daily living, especially when fused with an understanding of the other core concept I want to share today, dependent origination, or the interconnectedness of all phenomena. Buddhism teaches that all phenomena is interrelated. Through the concept of dependent origination, it holds that nothing exists in isolation, independent of other phenomena. In other words, all beings and phenomena exist or occur only because of their relationship with other beings or phenomena. Everything in the world comes into existence in response to causes and conditions. Nothing can exist in absolute independence of other things or arise of its own accord. A common Buddhist metaphor for this is a bundle of reeds, bundles of reeds, two bundles of reeds that are leaning up against each other. And because they're leaning up against each other, they're able to stand upright. But if you remove one bundle, then the other one falls. In a sense, one cannot exist without the other. When we fuse this concept of dependent origination with the concept of coup or unlimited potential, it challenges us to overcome our perceived limitations for positive change in the world. We don't always do this. It's very natural for us to apply various types of definitions to people and situations and ourselves in order to make sense of the world. But unless we're careful about the nature of our thoughts and opinions, we can easily become trapped in narrow and often negative views. He's not a very nice person, or I'm no good at relationships, or there will never be peace in the Middle East. As soon as we make up our minds about something in this way, we impose a limitation on it, shutting out the possibilities of positive growth and development. When we choose to view things in terms of coup or their infinite potential, positive potential, and dependent origination, then our thoughts and actions become a constructive influence, helping to create the conditions for that potential to become a reality. Because of the intimate interconnectedness of all things, each of us at each moment has a profound impact on the shared reality of life. The way we see things has a definite defining effect on reality. Realizing this enables us to act with the confidence that we can shape reality toward positive outcomes. And with that, I know that was all very abstract in a sense, but I also wanted to share just a little bit about what it's like to actually practice in daily life as a Soka Gakkai Nichiren Buddhist. So what you see in front of you is an altar that all practitioners have in their home. Inside of the altar is a scroll called a Gohonzon that is based on the scroll originally inscribed by Nichiren. It's what we look at as we're chanting. It's viewed as an object of devotion. It's often thought of as a mirror of yourself, your own enlightened self. And when I chant, often what's going through my mind is my dreams or my determinations or the direction with which I want to move my life. I'm also chanting for the happiness of my friends, my family. I'm also chanting for the happiness of people I don't like or people who I feel maybe are causing more suffering in my life, which for me is very important because it takes me back to this core Buddhist concept of Buddha nature existing equally in the lives of all people, even people that you think may be uh, dominated by evil or considered evil. And it creates the basis for universal sense of dignity in all people's lives. Um, I also chant for my community. And my chanting together with others in my Buddhist community is an opportunity to meet people from many backgrounds and learning from each other and our life experiences. One thing I take away is that everybody has struggles. Everybody wants to be happy. Everybody has something unique they can contribute with their life. Um, and I think because of this foundation, I think it's changed the way I see the world. When I'm in the grocery store and I see strangers, for example, my starting point is that this person is equal to me. They have dignity. They want to be happy. They're struggling with some things. They have something unique they can contribute to society. Um, I think it makes me more empathetic. It helps me be less judgmental, more quick to connect with people. And I think helps to uh, disrupt any type of unconscious biases that I might carry with me. And I think it helps me to try to bring out the best in other people and believe that I can bring out the best in other people because I'm confident that the Buddha nature is there. Um, and I think we'll just share a little bit um, about my own experience. I was actually born into a family that practiced Buddhism. I was always sort of around it. I always liked the people. I always liked the philosophy of it. I thought it made sense and was very positive and affirming. One thing I didn't understand was chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, because for me it seemed difficult for me to wrap my hand around it rationally, how chanting did anything. And I think my general sort of mode of operation in life was that I was going to use my brain to think my way out of any problem I would ever encounter in my life. Um, and when I started to practice, it was because, or I mean, when I started to practice based on my own volition, um, it was because I was really struggling with depression. It was after I'd graduated from college. And the source of the depression was the fact that I was struggling with being gay, or specifically being closeted as a gay man. I was living with my best friends that I've known since middle school. We're all living in our townhouse together. They're all straight. And we're all, because we're living together, our lives are getting so much closer, or at least theirs were. So we're talking to each other every day, opening up to each other, seeing each other. But because I had this secret, I was always hesitant to open up too much. And it was really killing me inside. In a way, I felt like I was not participating in that deep friendship that I saw blossoming around me. It was almost like looking at my life happening through a window that I wasn't fully participating in. And my depression got to the point where I would, literally sit in my room for hours and just stare at the walls and do nothing. And it started to take a toll on my health. I realized I needed to do something because my approach to life was obviously not working. Because obviously, the more I thought about my situation to try to find a solution by thinking about it, the worse I felt. It was just rumination of just repeating this sort of these negative thoughts and these negative feelings over and over and over again. I realized I needed something else to break me out of it. And for whatever reason, at that time, I remembered chanting and its promise of being able to tap into these potentials within ourselves to break through any circumstance, any karma. And although I was still skeptical, I realized I needed something. So I determined to start chanting, and I started chanting. And I remember even when I first started chanting, I had to make a conscious effort to push the cynicism and the doubt out of my mind and just allow myself the freedom to be in a mental place where I could say, this is going to work. Absolutely. I'm not going to live like this. I'm going to change my life. I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but it's going to happen. And as I chanted with that single-minded determination based on faith, um, I felt better. And I was very surprised that I felt better because I was so inherently skeptical and cynical. Um, and whether it was something authentic or something a placebo, I didn't know, but I knew it was doing something very good for me. And when I within about 12 months or so, I had managed to muster the courage to come out to all my friends, all my family, and just fundamentally change my life. And it was a very positive experience. Um, and it was an example for me of turning what felt impossible into the possible. And it made me think that the reason I need Nichiren Buddhist practice in my life is not so much to do the things that are easy for me, but to do the things that are hard for me, or might even seem impossible for me, and to fill my life with this um, sort of endless source of hope and determination and confidence that no matter what life presents me with, it's exactly what I need in my life in order to further my human revolution, to grow into the person I'm capable of becoming. Nothing I experience is beyond my capacity to create value from. And it's created a a path of wisdom where I've been able to challenge myself to keep pushing and grow and learn and sort of broaden my own awareness of what I'm capable of doing in my life and find ways to break through difficulties that I might never have done had I not sort of reached out to this thing that we call faith. Um, and with that, I think I'm going to close, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are some. But thank you for giving me this time to share. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Danny, so much. I see there's a couple of comments that are in there. I don't know if you wanted to address the comments. I have a question when you're done.
Sure. Let me see. To me, it's interesting how in Eastern Buddhism, the idea of attaining Buddhahood in this life and as bodhisattvas of the earth chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo as a vow to help others achieve happiness correlate to the beliefs of attaining second comforter as an expectation for this life, and two, a vow or covenant made that predates this world to condescend as a noble or great one to enter mortality on a rescue mission to help others attain happiness. Yeah, that's true. That's sort of getting a little bit deeper into the Lotus Sutra than I covered, but yeah, there's a concept in Buddhism of bodhisattva, where it's a life state where you've sort of attained this ability to manifest Buddhahood, but instead of entering into Buddhahood, into the place of nirvana and extinguishing the cycle of birth and rebirth, you choose to maintain, you stay as a bodhisattva, so you can continue to be reborn into the world again and again and again to help others develop themselves and further themselves along the path to Buddhahood. And of course, in the Lotus Sutra, there's even a more radical sort of understanding of this, that there is no pure land that we get reborn into at the state of Buddhahood where we're no longer reborn, but actually Buddhahood is an internal state of life that has already existed with us from eternity, and we can tap into it exactly as we are in this lifetime. So it's Buddhahood not as a status of attainment where you're no longer reborn into this life, but it's Buddhahood as a state of life or potentiality that exists in our lives always, that we can tap into in the here and now, and makes the goal of manifesting the life state of Buddhahood something that is we have access to every moment every second of every day, through our thoughts and through our words, and through our actions. And that we practice Buddhism in order to help us manifest that state of life. Um, so I'm sorry, Jill, you had a question as well.
Yeah, well, first I want to say that I love this idea that recognizing that the delusion of separateness is the source of most of our problems.
Mm,
But I do have a question because I'm mostly familiar with the Dhammapada. And as I think about what I know and have learned from the study of that, with how you began talking about this idea of how Buddhists don't really look at this idea of God as this monotheistic thing. But in the Dhammapada, the gods are referenced innumerable times. So
right.
I was wondering if you could kind of help me understand what the lowercase g gods from the Dhammapada, how
Hmm.
they fit in, unless it's that the Lotus Sutras kind of have just removed that aspect.
Yeah. So I think in the Lotus Sutra, a lot of the ideas in the stories of Buddhism, including the idea of deities and supernatural creatures that appear in stories in the Buddhist texts, are internalized as states of life or experiences of life as human beings, in a sense, as metaphors that help us understand how we experience existence. Um, and the there are some references to gods that have influence in sort of a pantheistic way that are often, I think, understood more generally as functions of the universe, or functions of the underlying law, uh, of the law underlying all phenomena. And when we tap into that, we and essentially the idea is that we tap into this interconnectedness with the entire cosmos, and that we're able to bring uh, the entire universe to, in a sense, to operate in the direction of our lives and our determinations moving forward in every single life moment. And in a sense, so it's like something outside of ourselves, like deity figures coming into interaction with our lives. But the Buddhist perspective is that we're all interconnected. So the idea of self and other doesn't really exist. Everything is sort of viewed as oneness. Um, and so it's already part of our existence. But that I think the description of deity figures is sort of helpful when based on our sort of comfort with sort of looking at a more dualistic way of seeing life. But I think at the Lotus Sutra level, it's really understood as being just a manifestation of our internal state of life and our connectedness with the oneness of the universe, based on our connection with this underlying principle or law of the Dharma. I don't know if if that's helpful or makes sense,
No,
but
that's good. Thank you so much.
okay, sure.
So I see that there's one more question, a couple more things. Let's see here.
Let's
Yeah, there's
see.
a comment there for you with a question attached to it, Danny.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Great parallelism between the faiths. Thanks for sharing. I really like the story of how Buddhism helped you escape depression. Which concepts most helped you with depression aside from chanting with faith? Um, I think for me, probably it's the emphasis on Buddha nature. Because, I grew up with this belief that all people possess this Buddha nature. We're all equal, and we're all equally worthy of respect, and dignity. And so even though I might have, grown up and in many ways feeling terrified of religion when I, hearing fire and brimstone speeches from Jerry Falwell and such. Um, I had these Buddhist concepts as sort of a corrective to remind me that um, I that's not what I've been taught. I've taught that I have dignity and that my life has value. Um, and I think it helped me become more of a critical thinker, I guess, because I realized that um, although many people believed uh, those things, I realized that it just wasn't true for me. And I think it helped me become stronger, able to sort of accept that there are people who have different views, and so, in fact, views that could be very antagonistic towards me, and then not allow it to define me. And it gave me a lot of strength, I think, to be able to just sort of cope with the challenges of daily life um, that come when you're different in a society that sometimes doesn't celebrate differences. So I would say that was very helpful for me. Um, and there was a question, what would
I
the
think
scripture do?
I think that was these. So I was going to recap here that if you have
Oh, sure.
questions for the speakers, you can put it in the question box for the speakers. But this next comment looks like it was more of a chat for the audience. So,
Got it. Okay, sounds great.
Danny, thank you so much for coming today. I really
Sure.
appreciate it.
My
It
pleasure.
was a
Thank you.
nice pleasure having you.